What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you. Yet another one that came out on the 4th of August that we want to go over because we've gone over two of their albums. Was the latest offering from Humanity's Last Breath, Ashen. Again, this also comes out on the 4th of August on Unique Leader Records. This band formed in 2009 in Sweden, helmed by one Buster Oldholm.
This old home.
So many apologies.
With Bob Vila.
Yeah, no, he's not on there. But he's also the main guy that helms Vild Yarta as well, which is a heavy gent band, which technically this is too, but it's also kind of like down-tempo and deathcore. And, well, this is their 5th album. Again, we went over their last 2 albums, Abyssal and Vald, and I actually kind of liked Vald. Abyssal was...
not so much.
But this is just pummeling, dense, heavy, down-tempo, gent, deathcore, and it is just completely lush with atmosphere. And, I mean, if you like primal chugging and syncopated riffs and steady down-tempo grooves, then you're probably a fan of this band.
This definitely sounds like Humanity's Last Breath. There is no denying that whatsoever. If you don't have good speakers, I would recommend turning the volume maybe down a tad. It is bottom heavy as fuck. It clips on our speaker, but not on 212s. I have 212s in my car, and it sounds magnificent. It will clip everywhere else.
Yeah. Opening up with this album, Blood Spilled, I mean, the production on here is denser than a fucking collapsed star. Like, it is thick with atmosphere, bottom-heavy, down-tuned guitars, drums that are just stupid loud, and bass drops. Holy fuck, there are bass drops all over this album. And that's kind of to be expected from the style. Like, that's kind of what they do. Like, they like this dark, dense, ugly, kind of just, I don't know, like, miserable sounding. Like, everything is just,
It's like my 5th grade teacher. Dark, dense, ugly, unfortunate.
Yeah, it's that pretty much consistently through. There are no moments of brightness on here. Everything is just, I don't know, like oppressively heavy. Like, this is heavier than hell. Like, this is honestly, like, in terms of, like, the more core side of things, one of the heaviest albums we've gone over this year.
Yeah. Once again, guitars tuned to, like, Z, which I realize isn't a note, but they're down there.
Yeah.
I mean, just bottom-heavy chugs.
There's like 15 strings on this fucking guitar.
Yeah.
At that point, I think it's a bass, too. I don't know. Like, it's insanely heavy, and, well, I mean, it has a lot of moments of, you know, interesting melodies, weird syncopated riffs, lush soundscapes, some really solid vocals, honestly. Like, the vocals in here are, like, terrifying roars.
Yeah, I like that he chose to stray away from the robotic vocals that were found in Abyssal. I was not a fan of those. I mean, these are just terrifying, fucking gross growls.
You do have some effects on them every now and then, like, you know, some weird, like, little skittering sort of effects just to lead in a breakdown, which that is what this whole album is. It is definitely one giant breakdown. But again, if you're familiar with this band, you might own their previous 4 breakdowns / albums. That is what this band loves to do. It is a perpetual breakdown of just infinite heaviness.
Now, that's not to say that this album isn't without melody. The last track, Bearer, I think has probably one of the most memorable melodies as it hangs out the longest. In the song In Still, there is melody brought on by a very haunting female choir that comes in, fades in, and then fades out, and then fades in real quick, and it's alarming.
Yeah, if you ever wondered what Enya would sound like if they scored The Exorcist, it's kind of close. It's, it kind of jumps out at you like, whoa, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
But that's kind of what this band does in terms of, like, their transitions. They are transition happy. Like, if you like something, by the time you have time to write down, I like that, it's already changed 3 times.
Yes. Which brings us to a point that we want to make. if you go to one of these shows, I've never seen this band live. I've been a fan of these guys since the self-titled album in 2013. If you go to one of these shows, it might possibly be the safest mosh pit you were ever in because no one knows what's happening. And it doesn't hold on to anything long enough for you to even form like, all right, I'm about to punch this dude, and no.
Yeah, no, that's what I see, like a pit full of just very confused moshers, like, dude, we're not even moshing the rhythms, like, so, I don't know, fucking punch me, who cares?
Yep, because it is that heavy. It is violently heavy. The song Catastrophize is violently heavy. It holds on to a groove, I think, longer than any other song on here. I'd say, like, the first, 30 seconds, it is heavy as fuck, and atonal dissonance, and fucking chugging.
Yeah, there's a cool section of, broken down chugs over blast beats, which blast beats, they pop up every now and then. They're more or less, almost like an extended fill.
Yep.
But there's some really solid, good rhythms toward the end, like more straightforward chugging, some interesting melodies. And also on Labyrinthian, I think there's some really cool fucking clean vocals on there and a absolutely massive breakdown. Big fucking shocker there. And there's a hooky groove towards the end with some actual riffs. And here we go into the complaining portion of this already. Man, this album runs like one continuous breakdown, and while I listen to tons of albums like that, I like early Veil of Maya and shit like that, and those albums are continuous breakdowns, but they're kind of fun. This album, all right, well, one big issue is the production, because this is so layered and dense, and it's just wall-to-wall noise. There's a constant din going on in the background of every song. It's like a choir of 500 broken refrigerators and microwaves all going off at the same time.
Yeah.
And then you have the dissonant guitars, which pop up between every chug, and there's so much space in between the chugs, but it's so constant, and again, it kind of buries elements. Anytime there is a riff, when it hangs out for long enough, it gets buried by a lot of extra atmosphere. And this also employs a lot more electronics than I think any of their albums. There's droning synths in the background constantly, and this is just kind of noisy.
Which leads me to another problem. Every song sounds nothing like it starts, but then everything like everything else. Because when there is a cool riff, it's so predictable. It cuts off. And then there's electronic noise, and then it goes silent for a minute. Not really silent, because there's still a droning in the background, but it cuts off, and then it edges out into this weird electronic fucking spacey thing, and then comes back in with another riff. And it's in every song, which makes it horribly predictable.
Yeah, it's like a deathcore band discovering shoegaze. You get these droning ambient melodies, but again, nothing really hangs out for too long. There's not enough time for anything to really stick. And honestly, going through this album, I was like, man, dude, how do any of these songs stand out? Because they're all kind of doing the same thing, just in a different order. This polyrhythm's slightly different, but you're still accenting every time the bass drum hits. And the distant atmosphere might be a little bit different, or you got a little squealy beedly wah or something at the end. And still has some really just kind of weird squawky riffs. And sometimes they generate a hook, but most of the time it's I feel like this is kind of recycled. And it's just, I don't know, it's just too much. And honestly, I was thinking, if you stripped away all the ambience, all the extra stuff on here, would this actually work as songs that are memorable? Would this be something you would actually jam? Because I don't know. I really don't know.
I don't think so. Because after we talked about that, I started listening to the song as if okay, if all this extra shit wasn't here, what would this sound like? Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. We stopped it and actually had this conversation about that. So once I got into that mindset of, okay, let's strip out the electronic bullshit, let's strip out all the extra crap in the background, and I started listening to just these riffs, I don't know if it would work. It just sounds like a bunch of down-tuned chugging. And because it's so disjointed, like it switches so often to another thing, I think you'd have to really, really be paying attention to time signatures and such to understand where it's going next. And I don't think it would work. I think that atmospheric filler is there to make something so incredibly disjointed a little bit more cohesive.
Most of this is like musical binary code. It's ones and zeros. It's like trying to decipher TV static or trying to follow one bee in a beehive in terms of like finding something that really stands out. And again, if it does stand out, it's only on here for a second and then it shifts on. And generally it shifts on to a breakdown, which at a certain point I was like, man, I don't want to hear a breakdown again for a long time. Like this is like trying to escape a boring conversation, and it's about breakdowns.
By the time you get to the 5th or 6th track, you can almost guess what the rest of the album is going to sound like. And in fact, with the exception of the song Burden, where it actually just chills the fuck out and it's noise, that was actually less of a burden in the sense because I got a moment to chill out.
Yeah, it's like Tangerine Nightmare. It's just waves of just droning synths, and honestly it was like I get a chance to breathe. Like it's kind of fucked up that an interlude is one of the favorite songs on this album for me, just because it was a break from everything they were doing on here. And I love super heavy music, but man, you gotta do more with it. And honestly, like I don't remember Vold being like this. In fact,
I don't either.
think Vold was a pretty solid album. Like it had all the dark atmosphere, but there was enough on there to break it up. There were songs that really stood out.
Yeah.
There's not really a song in here that stood out very much.
Because of the fact that you can't hold on to riffs long enough, there's nothing to remember. Other than, this was a heavy riff, this was a heavy riff, this was a cool groove, but it's so interchangeable that it just makes it not make sense.
Yeah, I feel like this is like a down-tempo attempt at like Author and Punisher. Yeah. Like, that band is, I guess you could call like power electronics, industrial, like, and a lot of the soundscapes are very similar. But again, this goes to one well so often that, honestly, it just became kind of a chore to listen to. But yeah, as impressively heavy as this is, and occasionally like technically proficient in terms of the polyrhythms, it's dull. It's just a really dull affair, and a lot of repeated tropes that just spiral into a pit of breakdowns. Breakdowns, yeah. But yeah, I really wasn't a fan of this, and again, I was kind of looking forward to it because again, I liked the last one, but this was not very good. So overall, I'm gonna go ahead and give this 2.5 stars. Like, yeah, there's some moments in here that I think are pretty decent. It's heavy, it's dense, but most of this is just rinse and repeat. And granted, like, if there was something to break it up, the rinsed and repeated elements in here would probably be a little bit more interesting, but there isn't. As much as I could be impressed by, the level of production here being so insane sounding, or how just ridiculously bottom heavy these riffs are, or how sonically heavy this album is, it's really not enough to make me go back to it very often. Like, there might be a couple of tracks in here, but for the most part, this is just kind of Humanity's Last Breath doing Humanity's Last Breath, and not as well as they've done it before. But yeah, if you're a fan of, I don't know, like down-tempo stuff, like I guess Acacia Strain, but it's not nearly as interesting as Acacia Strain, or Filth, that's about it. And well, Humanity's Last Breath, of course. Check it out, form your own opinions. You might really love it. This just was not for me.
As for me, I'm not even going to give it 2.5. I'm going to give it a 2. Really, to be honest, I found it boring. And you'd think with, riffs that heavy, or chugs necessarily that heavy, because everybody knows I'm a big fan of chug, you'd think that it would be right up my alley. There was a time where this band was right up my alley, but it's not this record. There are cool riffs scattered throughout here, and if they would have hung on to them here and there, it would have been something different, because then I would have said, okay, this was memorable. I remember this. But, like, it's so disjointed and just so buried in sound. Even the riffs that were cool are incredibly buried by noise. And I feel like they didn't stand out enough. And, like, the fact that this record is so grossly predictable, that it's going to go from a decent riff to electronic noise to a breakdown. Like, all the songs did that. There's 11 songs on here that are just nothing but the same shit. And with the exception of Burden, that was nice and quiet, and I got a chance to really catch my breath and breathe a little bit.
Honestly, you could rearrange these tracks in any order.
You really could. I mean, you really could.
Wouldn't change anything.
Nope, it really wouldn't. And that's upsetting. And while this band has always been kind of transition happy, I feel like a lot of the moments that could have been grandiose or bigger on this record were killed by the fact that they just cut out too soon. That's not to say you're not going to like it. If you're a fan of Humanity's Last Breath, you're still going to be a fan of Humanity's Last Breath, because this, in fact, sounds like Humanity's Last Breath and Vildiarda and a couple other bands that like to pull tricks like this. Go check it out for yourself. Form your own opinion. We encourage that here. But overall, for me, it was 2 stars, and I found it kind of boring. So that's where I'm at.
So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsofmetal.com, which is currently under construction, but should be showing up here in the near-ish future.
Yep.
Our Patreon link's on our channel anyway, but when the site does show up, we will more than likely have some shirts in there.
Yep.
And, well, probably before that, we will have a video showing off said shirts and probably do a giveaway for one.
Because that's what we do, and the shirts are actually really neat.
Yes.
7 colors. They pop. It's bright. I saw it today. It looks fucking awesome. I can't wait. Last but not least, we are at the thank you portion of the video, where we do things like thank you. And thank you. We really mean it every time we say it. You guys are amazing. I'm so glad that we have this channel and we have this avenue. You guys talk to us, we talk to you. It's become such a big part of our lives. And, I, for one, am incredibly thankful. I know this dude is head over heels with Thralls of Metal, and it's all because of you guys. So thank you to each and every single one of you.
Thank you all once again, and we will catch you later.